Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of March 1st to the 7th, 2026, where I take a look at a couple stories that caught my attention and give you my thoughts and my opinion about them. And we have 4 stories to cover this week, including Microsoft confirming their next console under the name of Project Helix, if I'm saying the name correctly though. Excuse me. We're also learning about Sony's decision to, it sounds like they are going to be scaling back in terms of porting their games over to the PC. Nintendo hosted their IndieWorld Showcase, and we are getting reports about basically how well Resident Evil Requiem has done so far. So that certainly we'll be covering. If you're interested in where I got the source of these informations, links will be in the description of this video, so you can watch this either on YouTube or Patreon. And of course, the timestamps will also be there if there are certain parts of this video you wish to skip to. But before we get started, I would like to do what I like to call it the quick My 2 cents, stories that kind of caught my attention, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details and all. The first one has to do with the announcement that Kendra Bridge of Spirits is basically coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. For those who are not familiar, this was a title released around the time the PS5 launched though. At the time, it was supposedly an exclusive to that system, but it did eventually make its way over to the PC, and it is also made its way over to the Xbox system. So to see this come to the Nintendo Switch 2 is certainly nice indeed. It will be very interesting to see how well this game runs on the Switch 2 and it'll be interesting if it's the full game in the cart or if it's going to be a game key card type situation. I'm hoping, my fingers are crossed that this isn't a code in the box situation. And so we know that a sequel is on its way, and supposedly developers are partnering up with Sony for the sequel though, so remains to be seen if that sequel will make its way over to other systems as well, but time will ultimately tell if that is the case or not. We also learned that apparently there is a game going to be available on PC though, which is, I cannot believe this one exists and all. It's basically a game based off of you playing as a Karen, the stereotypical, very angry, woman and all, basically when things don't go her way and everything. And why this game exists is beyond me in every single way possible, but supposedly you can wish this on the Steam right now. It's on PC. No word if this is coming to consoles at this moment though, so time will only tell if that is the case. But the fact that this even existed is just wow. That is interesting. Let's just say it's just weird but interesting that this actually exists and everything. We also learned that Capcom has released a new trailer for the upcoming game Pragmata, and the fact that the game will come out the same month, but the release date has changed and it's now going to be released a little bit earlier than originally though, which I think that's great and everything. I tried the demo out of Pragmata on the Switch 2 version and all, and I definitely like what I'm seeing so far though, and this one I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out when that one comes out. I believe it's April that will be out though, so that one's going to be keeping an eye out though. We also learned that Sony Santa Monica Studios is working on a new franchise that will take place within the same universe of the God of War series, which that's certainly going to be interesting to see and see how that one plays out at all. So I will definitely be keeping an eye out on that one indeed and all. We also learned that supposedly Resident Evil Requiem currently has the highest user score of all time on Metacritic, which again, take what you will about Metacritic. Some folks agree or disagree with it though. Same view with Rotten Tomato, but yeah, the game is definitely getting a lot of praise so far, and a lot of people seem to like it. Although there has been some reports of some folks giving it a negative review. There's some claim that because the game is too scary and all. So depending on how you want to look at that and all. We also learned that basically Starfield supposedly couldn't be confirmed for a release date soon by a reliable insider though. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen. It is possible we could see Starfield make its way over to the PS5 and everything. There was rumors of a Switch 2 version, although some claim throw that one in doubt, but we'll have to wait and see if the Switch 2 version happens or not, though. But I mean, we'll see if they announce something about Starfield for the PS5 and whether or not that will click with PS5 owners or not. We also learned that there are reports coming out that Iron Galaxy Studios could be making a remastered version of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas is considered high regards to a lot of Fallout fans out there indeed. This hasn't been confirmed at this time, but with the Elder Scrolls Oblivion remaster happening and supposedly that one doing very well and all, I would not be shocked if a remaster or a remake of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas does happen, though. New Vegas, that would be interesting considering that Obsidian was the one that worked on the original Fallout New Vegas. So if assuming this is true, I would be a bit surprised that they didn't go to Obsidian to do a remake of Fallout New Vegas and everything. But time will tell if that is the case and everything. We also learned that a remake of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, top title like Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resync, is in development. We have yet to see any screenshots or anything at this time, though. And if it remains to be seen if it does exist, it remains to be seen if it will suffer the same fate as what we saw what happened with the Prince of Persia, the Sands of Time remake, and how footage of that one came out that led to enormous backlash. Ubisoft later went back to the drawing board with that, ultimately canceled that one. So we'll see if this one suffers the same fate or not. I'm hoping that's not the case. I do think Black Flag is the best entry in the Assassin's Creed series, at least in my view, though. But time will tell if that turns out to be the case or not. We also learned that supposedly the upcoming Castlevania 2D game is not a roguelike game or a roguelike game in general, despite the fact that this is coming from the same developers that handle, I think, the Dead Cells games and everything, which, depending on your views, some folks like roguelike games, some don't. So this one may, for those who aren't a fan, may breathe a sigh of relief on this. I am curious about this new Castlevania game, though, so this one I'll be keeping an eye out for. We also learned that Mind's Eye Studios, that studio, to be exact, though, has recently announced more layoffs, and the CEO is now spying espionage and criminal sabotage over their game that they put out, though, which basically, the build a rocket in terms of the whole situation surrounding Mind's Eye. The espionage and criminal sabotage, I'm not sure. Unless there's hard evidence to back that claim up, I'm not sold on that one, though. It's just that Mind's Eye was just a bad game, unfortunately, though. And Build a Rocket definitely, it just put out a bad game in general. So I'm not buying that argument. It is unfortunate about the layoffs and everything like that, but I'm not buying the CEO's claim and everything. And last but not least, though, it has now been reported that Nintendo is suing the U.S. government over Trump's tariffs. For those who may not be familiar, last year, around the same time that Nintendo did a switch to Nintendo Direct, President Trump announced tariffs that were going to be imposed. This led to a lot of problems with, this led to a price hike on a lot of things, though, and Nintendo had to re-examine their price point and delay the pre-orders, though. In the end, the good news is the Switch 2 did not see a price hike, but the bad news is, and the games as well, the bad news, however, was the accessories saw a price hike, and eventually the Switch 1 got a price hike, though. And with the whole situation with the RAM shortage, there's worry that there's only a matter of time before the Switch 2 does get a price hike. But with the Supreme Court recently ruling against Trump's tariffs, though, now there looks like some folks may be suing to get a refund, and Nintendo is first one out of the gate, at the very least, though. We'll see if Nintendo will win with this lawsuit or not. They have a track record of suing and winning in some of these cases, though. I don't know if they'll succeed as one or not, so time will only tell if that is the case. I will say, while I may not agree with all of Nintendo's decisions, though, this is one case where I would side with them and say I hope they do win this lawsuit indeed. The tariffs were a big mistake to begin with. I am not a fan of the tariffs, nor am I a fan of Donald Trump in general. So in this case, I'm hoping that Nintendo does win this lawsuit, at least from my view, and I also stand behind what I said and everything. And in the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cents, we learned that filming has started with the upcoming Sonic the Hedgehog 4 movie, though. It'll be very interesting to see what direction they go with this one. Indeed, though, we know Amy is going to be a part of it, though. How big of a role remains to be seen, and it'll be interesting to see if we see more of Metal Sonic. Indeed. There have been theories about what direction Sonic the Hedgehog 4 might go. Some say it might borrow from Sonic CD with the time traveling. Others might think it might borrow from Sonic Heroes and everything, but we'll see exact. Plus, of course, Shadow, anybody who saw the end credit scenes in Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Shadow survived, so it'll be interesting to see how big of a role Shadow will play in Sonic the Hedgehog 4. Continuing on, there is certainly Sir Ben Kingsley is apparently landed a key role in the upcoming Sonic the Hedgehog 4 movie, that's at least according to what the rumors are saying. What role he might play, that remains to be seen, to be exact, though. So we'll have to wait and see, and hopefully a trailer will drop for Sonic 4 at some point down the road, but right now it's just a rumor at this time. We also learned that supposedly Star Wars Allocate, the second season would have had shown, at least according to a report from the Direct, though, that Yoda would have had like a bit of a dark side to it, though. It is a bit unfortunate with the Allocate that it didn't do as well, to be exact, and a second season isn't going to happen. I was very mixed on the first season, though. I like the idea of exploring the Old Republic, don't get me wrong. It's just that this one just it didn't click with me as much, though, and it is a bit unfortunate indeed. And hearing this idea of exploring maybe a dark side of Yoda though, would have been interesting to watch if that ever did happen or not. We also learned that the fourth season of Vox Machina will do a bit of a time jump, though. So for most of you who are familiar, up to this point, season 2 and 3 focus on basically, I think, that scene, with the dragon and everything. So it will be interesting to see how the fourth season plays out and everything. I know there's sort of a spin-off series. I gotta get to watching that. I gotta finish up with the Fallout season 2. So we'll see. It'll be very interesting to see how season 4 plays out. And unfortunate news, though, legendary or B-movie actor Bruce Campbell has sort of come out and reported that he has been diagnosed with cancer and all. But most of you will, he's familiar with a lot of Sam Raimi movies out there. Most famous ones are like the Evil Dead movies. To making an appearance here and there in other movies and other shows as well. To even voicing some characters and everything. I remember him being on several episodes of Xena Warrior Princess and Hercules: The Legendary Journey and all. So very unfortunate to hear this report, though. I'm hopefully that he's able to recover or at least try to get treatment for this, though. So very unfortunate to hear the news from legendary B-movie actor Bruce Campbell and all. Okay, with the Quick My 2 Cent part now out of the way, along with the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cent, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with Resident Evil Requiem and everything. Now, the game has just came out and everything. I picked up the Switch 2 version. I got the Resident Evil Generation Pack for the Switch 2, which has Requiem, Resident Evil 7, and Resident Evil Village. It just downloaded them onto the Switch 2. I'm hoping to try some of them out tonight and maybe this Saturday and everything. So want to give that one a go, though. But so far the game seems to have done very well for at least Capcom. As so far there have been reports that it's sold 5 million units worldwide and everything, which certainly is impressive and all. And we certainly got some sales numbers that have recently came out, at least from both Japan and in the UK. It'll be interesting to see what the Satana numbers are once those come out, though. Probably maybe late March or maybe April, so we'll have to wait and see. But depending on the regions, though, it seems that the game, at least for the Switch 2, did well in one area, maybe not as much in the other areas, though. So over in the UK, though, it's been reported that Switch Canadian Forces. Basically, it points out where the Switch 2 in terms of the platform split. And so while this week Resident Evil Requiem in the UK is at number 1, in terms of platform split, it basically says PS5 has 54%, PC 36%, Xbox system 6%, and Switch 2 at 4%. It's also worth pointing out that the Resident Evil Generation Pack, which is a Switch 2 exclusive, at least for now, is entered in at number 3 on the UK charts this week. It points out that, quote, Switch 2 at the bottom of the platform split contributes 4% of the overall sales. With that said, however, the game business Christopher Drinkins has stated that Requiem sales on Switch 2 are broadly the same as Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition last year. He also said that Requiem did more in its first week than Mario Tennis Fever, while its overall physical sale eclipsed both Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil Village. Now, I have heard about how, the UK, maybe not on the same level with being a big Nintendo fan or something like that, depending on who you're asking though, but still, nevertheless, the game itself doing very well is certainly nice indeed. However, over in Japan, apparently Resident Evil Requiem on the Switch 2 seemed to be doing very well, as this report from My Nintendo seems to indicate, though, that it points out that it seems as though the Japanese gamers are lapping up the recent release of Resident Evil Requiem on the Nintendo Switch 2. Reports are circulating that the latest Resident Evil game, or Biohazard as it's often referred to in Japan, on the Nintendo Switch 2 was sold out at 3 of the biggest retailers in the land of the rising suns. It points out the name of the retailers, including, they point out Amazon Japan, which they said, Amazon Japan is also sold out copies of Nintendo Switch 2 version. See, Capcom made precisely the correct decision to launch the game on the platform. So, obviously, it sounds like, at least according to these reports, UK, okay, I guess, though. It depends on how you want to look at it, though. But in Japan, it does seem to be doing very well. Like I said before, we'll have to wait to see what the Satana numbers are and how it did here in the US and everything. And I'm very curious to see, in terms of the top 10 Nintendo and Nintendo Switch 2 games, how well that one does. Will it make it onto that list, especially with like what we saw with Final Fantasy VII Remake and Integrate and everything. So we'll have to wait and see. But it certainly is very good to see that Resident Evil Requiem is doing very well indeed, though. It's going to be interesting to see what direction Capcom goes for the future of the Resident Evil franchise after Resident Evil Requiem. We know that supposedly there are rumors that they might do a remake of Code Veronica, and even rumors of Resident Evil 0 and 1 getting a remake, although some are a bit iffy about the first Resident Evil game getting a remake, since we did get a remake in 2002 on the GameCube before it came to other systems, though. If Capcom's going to continue with any of its remakes, there are 2 games I think could benefit from a remake if done correctly, and these are probably the absurd, or basically most out there Resident Evil game, and that is Resident Evil Survivor and Resident Evil Dead Aims. They were part of the Gun Survivor series that Capcom did on the PlayStation and PlayStation 2. Resident Evil Survivor, a Resident Evil Gun Survivor game based off of Resident Evil Code Veronica, Dino Stalker, and Resident Evil Dead Aims. Out of all of those, I would say Resident Evil Dead Aims is probably the best one out of the Gun Survivor series, followed by Dino Stalker. But I do think both of those games could benefit from a remake if Capcom were to go down that route. I mean, if you look at the first-person view that they have used in the Resident Evil games that started with Resident Evil 7, I think they could benefit from that, though, if done right. Don't know if Capcom will remake those games, though. My guess is that it's unlikely, but I think those 2 could benefit from a remake if they ever get a chance to do so. As for what the future may hold, it's going to be very interesting to see what direction they will go with the series after Resident Evil Requiem. But so far, given the position Capcom is and given the response to the latest entries, it seems that it's in a very good position indeed. So overall, I would say basically very nice to hear that Resident Evil Requiem is doing very well. In the UK, at least for the Switch 2 version, depending on your view, it could be good or bad, although the Generation Pack seems to be doing very well. But in Japan, it seems to be doing very good over there, though. But like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see what the Satana numbers are once here in the US, once we get those numbers in as well. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, and this one has to do with the IndieWorld Showcase that happened this week. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my 2 cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at the IndieWorld Showcase that happened this week and everything. So, after basically the partner showcase that happened, a lot of people were hoping if we would see like a general direct and everything. And while it is possible we could see one before June or anything like that, though, instead what we got here is sort of an IndieWorld Showcase. And again, depending on your view, either you're going to love or hate some of the IndieWorld Showcase that they have and everything like that. And since not every indie game out there is going to appeal for everybody. So after watching this one, I would say, this one was alright. It wasn't bad or anything like that. There was one game that I think definitely stood out for me the most on the IndieWorld Showcase, though, and there were some neat announcements and everything like that. But I would say the overall consensus was like, it was okay. It was fine. It wasn't anything spectacular. But it was just fine, indeed and all. So I'm going to break it down into what I like and what I didn't like, mixed, not 100% sure about. In terms of what I like, I will say Blueprints definitely looks interesting game indeed. I've heard about this game for a while, though. I've heard of it appearing on other platforms, especially onto the PC, and to see this one come to the Switch 2 is certainly a nice addition as well in terms of the whole rotating of like different rooms and everything. So this is certainly one I will probably be keeping an eye out. That one I'll be keeping an eye out for indeed. The next one is of course Rotwood, which is sort of like a co-op like brawler to a certain extent, or I believe that's the case and everything, but it is definitely one that I'll be keeping an eye out for. It's currently right now a console exclusive for the Switch 2 and everything. Let's see, what is the next one right up here called? Okay, hold on. Blighted, if I basically got this correct. Yeah, Brighton, indeed. This one being done by the same studio that did Guadalupe and all, and so this one definitely is one I'll be keeping an eye out. Indeed, though, DeadZone roguelike is an interesting first-person shooter. Supposedly, it is a co-op shooter, but you can basically play it as a single-player game to some extent. So that one I might look at, though. Mini Shot, however, that one looks interesting indeed. It's sort of like an adventure game, but within a twin stick shooter kind of approach. That's sort of I would say that's definitely a very interesting concept that they have for that one indeed, though. So it's certainly one I'll be keeping an eye out for. And last but not least, the one that I think really stood out the most was the Midnight Walk, though, is definitely one that's interesting. It's a first-person shooter, basically with like a clay animation, and I'm definitely getting like a Tim Burton vibe out of it, to be exact, though. So this is one I definitely will be keeping an eye out for, because I think this one is what stood out for me most in terms of the IndieWorld Showcase and everything. As far as what I didn't like, mixed, or I'm not sure about, I will say, other than the Midnight Walker, not a whole lot really clicked with me or stood out, though. Again, it wasn't a long IndieWorld Showcase and everything, but it wasn't a bad one either, though. So, but I guess there were some that I guess you can if you're into it, like My Little Puppy. Again, nothing against the developers and everything like that. I'm sure there's an audience for that kind of game and everything. It's just not something that clicks with me as much and everything. But again, outside of the Midnight Walk, nothing really stood out as much though. Overall, I would say this was an okay IndieWorld Showcase. Again, IndieWorld games are not going to appeal to everybody out there, and everyone has their own different preference and taste and everything like that. Not saying that there weren't some interesting games that they showed. There were. I certainly will be keeping an eye out for games like Blueprints, Brighton, and DeadZone Rogue Zone, with Midnight Walker definitely being what I figured, my view, the best thing they had at the IndieWorld Showcase. Don't get me wrong, but I would say this one isn't going to be as memorable or anything like that compared to how they had one IndieWorld Showcase when it was announced that Cuphead was coming to basically the Nintendo Switch and everything. So again, this was okay. I don't think it was anything spectacular, but I don't think it was terrible either. So I mean, some folks are going to like what they saw at the IndieWorld Showcase. Others are going to be like, eh. So it was all right, but nothing memorable, at least in my view and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 3. And this one has to do with a report coming out that seemed to indicate that Sony may be rethinking their strategy of bringing their games onto PC, particularly with the single-player games. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of my Might You Sent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at a situation with Sony in regards of them porting their PS5 or PlayStation games onto the PC platform and all. Now, this generation has been, I would say, very interesting because we've started to see companies sort of, in a way, kind of move away from console exclusivity, depending on whether you think that's a good or bad thing, though. Outside of Nintendo, that although has dipped their toes into putting their games like on the mobile device to a certain degree, they have been basically mostly been console exclusivity all the way with their games and all. Sony and Microsoft, on the other hand, is a little bit different though. Microsoft seems to be the one that kind of took the reign of the idea of bringing their games over to other systems and everything like that. Whether they will continue with that strategy, especially coming into their next system, which I'll be talking about in part 4 though, remains to be seen at this time. Microsoft, I believe I mentioned Microsoft and all. Sony, on the other hand, has been kind of not to the same scale as Microsoft to a certain degree, as most of them, they don't seem to be aiming for a day-to-day kind of approach or anything like that. Well, recently a report came out, especially from Jason Schreier, who I will say has a good history with a lot of its reporting, seems to indicate that Sony may be pivoting from that strategy, at least with the single-player parts of the games, to be exact. In an article from GameSpot, it reads that, quote, Sony is reportedly stopping its plans to release PS5 games on PC, and in an experiment that started a few years ago. The company will still consider multi-platform release for online games like Marathon, Marvel's Tokens, Fighting Soul, and Horizon Hunter Gathering, while single-player games like Death Stranding 2 and the upcoming Kira Scars of Cosma are still coming to PC. However, apart from those titles, no other PS5 single-player games are reported planned for a PC release. According to Bloomberg's reporter Jason Schreier, last year's plans for a Ghost of Yo type PC port were recently scrapped, and the upcoming game Action Saros will also remain exclusive to the PS5. Sources imitate that what Sony strategy did mention that plans could change in the future. Schreier also adds that several recent PC games have not sold well on PC due to Sony having an inconsistent release schedule for its game, and the company is looking to pivot back towards console exclusive. Schreier noticed that Sony hasn't been launching its AAA games day-to-day with PC, and as a result of that unpredictable candidates, it won't suffer many consequences if it pull back from the PC release though. And they also mentioned another factor is that might seal the fate for PC ports. Microsoft's next Xbox, which we'll talk in the next report, and it mentioned will be more like gaming PC than traditional console and everything like that. What this means for Sony's own studio's Nexus Studio, which focused primarily on PC ports, isn't known, although there's a chance news is positive in the wake of Sony's recent closure of Bluepoint Games, which I think that could be a possibility, but at the same time, they could have Nexus act more like a support studio in helping with some of these games. So there's also that possibility as well. So with the report about Microsoft's next system, Project Helix, which I'll talk to in part 4 here though, that could be a big factor to why Sony made the decision not to basically have their games on PC. Another factor is they could be looking at what Nintendo's doing and decide, you know what, maybe we should stick to, you know, at least for the single player part, console exclusivity. But it seems that they're okay with stuff like Marathon and basically Helldivers 2 being a multi-platform release. So that doesn't seem, those games won't be impacted by that though. And Death Stranding 2 on PC is still planning, along with the Kendra Bridge of Spirit sequel and everything. So it is interesting Sony has decided to take a different approach with this though, and it'll be very interesting to see if with the new leadership at Microsoft if they follow suit or not. Remains to be seen if that will be the case, but I am very curious indeed to see how that all plays out and everything. So we'll have to wait and see. If this strategy pays off for Sony or not though, but hopefully, I guess with this, hopefully we'll see if this means an increase or a better output for single player games or not and everything. Obviously, some folks are happy about this, others are not. Personally, I'm in indifference about it, to be exact. If Sony wanted to port their games to the PC, that's their decision at the end of the day. I know this may be a shock to Nintendo fans, but I have the same view as well. If Nintendo wanted to port their games to the PC or other platforms, that's their call at the end of the day. I highly doubt, given the direction Nintendo is going and where they are right now. But again, we've seen some crazy things this generation though, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But given, like I said, given where Nintendo is, I don't see that happening anytime soon and everything. So overall, given this is from Jason Schreier and given his history of a lot of reporting though, I do tend to believe that it's most likely Sony is scaling back their first party games or single player games onto the PC and all. Whether that changes down the road, however, that remains to be seen and everything. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our fourth and final part of our my 2 cent video with the announcement that Microsoft made that's confirmed their next console called Project Helix. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our fourth and final part of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at a report that has been confirmed by Microsoft that they are working on their next console titled Project Helix and all. Now, there has been some back and forth of whether or not Microsoft has been working on their new console or not. And this had to do with some of the directions that they were going in terms of bringing a lot of their games over to other systems and everything. And there were reports of what the next system might be. There has been some indication will be a high-end type console or a PC and console hybrid approach and everything. And when Sarah Bond and Phil Spencer announced their retirement, there were questions of whether or not that would still continue or not and everything. Well, today, or at least when this video comes out on Saturday, it will be on Friday and everything, we now have official confirmation, at least according to Microsoft, that they have just officially announced their next console, and they have officially confirmed, at least according to them, that this will be a console PC hybrid kind of a approach, to be exact though. From articles from Pure Xbox, it says, quote, "It's official, Xbox has announced today that the next Xbox console has a codename of Project Helix, and all of the rumors have suggested it will play both console and PC games when it launched in the future. The news was revealed by the new Xbox boss Asha Sharma, I apologize if I'm not saying her name correctly, on Twitter with the following statement saying, quote, great start to the morning with Team Xbox, where we talk about our commitment to the return of Xbox, including Project Helix, the code name for our next generation console. Project Helix will lead in platforms and play your Xbox and PC games. Looking forward to chatting about this more with partners and studios at my first GDC next week and everything. So basically, it points out that this game. Previously, we heard rumors coming from Windows Central Jez Corden and how the next Xbox console will allow you to exit out to window and access the likes of Steam, the Epic Store, and other storefronts to play PC games you desire, or you can just remain inside the console's ecosystems like you can today on Xbox Series X and S. Epic Game recently indicated interest in allowing its storefronts on the system, adding credibility to those rumors, so that seems to be set in stone. There's still no release date for the new Xbox console, but AMD has previously mentioned how it's ready to support a release in 2027. If Microsoft and Xbox are ready, we'll have to wait a little bit longer to see if that comes to fruition. Again, remains to be seen if that will happen, mostly because of the RAM shortage situation that is going on recently. So we'll have to see how this is going to play out and everything like that. So it will also be interesting to see what she talks to at GDC next week to other developers, if this spikes in interest with them or not, though. We've also seen that reports have come out that this could be the most open Xbox ever. From what Jez Corden has to say, he said, quote, from our reporting, we know that it's essential will be a gaming PC in its core, with the Xbox full screen experience from the Xbox Ally handheld at its front end. As such, Xbox Helix will be the most open Xbox ever. You'll be able to boot up Windows Desktop from here and install other PC stores such as Steam, Epic Games, GOG, Riot Client, Battle.net, and much more and all. So I will say, in terms of hearing this, I do think this could work if executed properly, and that's the thing, though, if Microsoft can pull this off and all. But at the same time, there are certainly some questions, though, about this, to be exact, though, as how this will work in terms of if you decide to use storefronts like Steam or Epic Games or GOG in this Project Helix and everything like that. Are we talking about actually having native games to play on this? Or are we talking about like streaming your games if you're using any of these storefronts? So there's certainly that questions to be exact, though. There's also the issues of developers are okay with this kind of approach to be exact, because, you know, as I mentioned in part 3, Sony is looking to scale back, you know, putting first party games or first single player games onto the PC storefront, and many are pointing to this could be one of the reasons to be exact. So the question is going to be how developers are going to feel about this Xbox PC hybrid approach that Microsoft will be taking for their next system and all. And finally, last but not least, there's also the price point, and this is where I think it could be a very sticky issue depending on what the price point may be, and that it might concern some folks in terms of spending money on this, though, as there are rumors, or at the very least the claim is the fact that this could cost like around $1,000 in general. Now, it's too early to tell if that is going to be the case or not, and so we're going to have to wait and see if that truly does become the number. But still, given where we are with the economy right now, including inflation, the whole RAM shortage situation, the whole tariff situation and everything, I think that's going to be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of folks if this console does cost $1,000, to be exact. I'm not saying that's official, but I just think that that's going to be a hard sell for some folks out there if that's how much it's going to cost and everything like that. But we'll have to wait and see and everything. But again, I will say the concept is interesting, to be exact. I'll admit I'm not a PC gamer or anything like that. I'm more of a console gamer, to point that out. But I'm not opposed to this idea in general, though. I think it's an interesting hybrid, though, much like how I find the Switch and Switch 2 the console handheld hybrid very interesting and was sold on that idea. Maybe this one I might be sold on to as well, though. Still, we'll have to get more information to come out, though, on how this is going to work. Can you switch between both of these things? You know, playing if you want to play it like it is on the Xbox Series S and X, or go to the Windows side. So it's going to be there's going to have to be more information about this and the price point and everything. So we're going to have to wait and see how this is all going to play out. Plus, I'm also very curious to see if the new CEO is going to make any changes to his approach that might have been different than what Phil Spencer or Sarah Bond had envisioned originally before they decided to retire and everything. And I do wonder if they are still looking at the idea of possibly doing a handheld and everything like that. Outside of the ROG Ally, but a native handheld and everything, as there are rumors about Sony their next system might also have a handheld as well. So, and of course, since they announced this, I do wonder if this is going to put pressure on Sony to maybe announce the PS6 sooner and all. Although there are some who feel like it might be too soon, considering the fact that many felt the PS5 really got off to a late start, mostly because of the COVID and the whole shipping issue, to be exact, though. So we'll have to see if this put pressure on Sony to announce the PS6, or if they decide to hold off before making any announcement on their next generation system and all. But overall, I would say the concept, what Microsoft is aiming for, is certainly interesting, and I'm very curious to hear more information about it, though. But at the same time, there are certainly a lot of questions that still need to be answered about the system, especially the price point, which I think could turn some folks away if the claim, or some folks who believe could cost, again, $1,000 to purchase the system. Again, I'm not saying that's the official price point. We still have to wait in. Things could change. We still have to hear official confirmation what the price point might be, but I can see where that could be a concern and all. But I will say the idea certainly sounds interesting, even for someone who is even someone who is pretty much a console gamer in general and all. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Resident Evil Requiem in terms of how it's doing in both in the UK and in Japan? Are you surprised by how well it's doing in those territories, or you're not really that shocked at all? And are you curious to see how well Resident Evil Requiem will do here in the US, especially for maybe, like the Switch 2 and all? What are your thoughts about the IndieWorld Showcase that happened this week, though? You thought the Indie Showcase was good? You thought it was okay? Or did you thought it was just outright bad? And were there any games that stuck out to you the most if you watched the IndieWorld Showcase? Excuse me. What are your thoughts about the report of Sony probably scaling back or being done with putting their single-player games onto the PC and all? Do you think this is the right strategy for Sony, or do you think this is the wrong strategy for Sony in general, for the PlayStation brand? And what are your thoughts about Project Helix, the code name for Microsoft's next system and all? Do you like the idea, the concept of the PC and the console hybrid approach being as one and everything? Do you like the idea of opening up different PC storefronts on this console in any way? And are you concerned about the possibility of a price point, maybe should the system reach $1,000 in general, if that does turn out to be true? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal me, Patreon, or Steam Labs. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you want this either on YouTube or Patreon. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye.